Welcome to class, everyone. I hope that you all had a great weekend, that you worked on your paper, and you're ready to revise your essay, your rhetorical analysis essay, with some of the skills and activities that we will be doing today in our lesson. Our academic notes will relate to style, and it is also a tool that you can use to improve your draft. And then we'll move into revising your draft. The first part of that part of the class will be your own revising, and then in class we're getting together with our peers and giving each other feedback. So for academic notes, I'd like you to read over some of these quotes that deal with style and copy one in your academic note paper. If you take time to read all of them, you'll see a common thread with each quote. And they all come up with the idea that style means we need to be clear in what we say. So there is a website that we're going to be using for the rest of the semester. It's called BYU Style Academy. On this, we're actually using this as part of our academic notes as well. You'll notice there are two links on this slide. The first one is the link to the actual Style Academy. If you take time to click on that first link, you'll see there are so many activities and ways that you can improve drafts, improve your writing, create better sentences, which ultimately leads to better paragraph, and finally to better essays. So in class today, we are going to use one of those links, and it centers around imitation. So if you all at home will click on that bottom link, what I want you to do in your lesson is listen to the video on imitation, and it will ask you to stop the video a couple of times and copy or fix a sentence that they have. This is a good way for you to see how you can improve at the grassroots level, at the sentence level. The main part of our class today is to make you have a great essay to turn in on Wednesday. So individually, be at home. One of the things that you can do to write better is to read your essay out loud. Sometimes when we are looking at words on pages, we don't notice what is glaringly obvious when we hear the words spoken aloud. And there is a great writing guru. His name is Peter Elbow. He says that when we practice this technique, it helps with 4 major flaws in our writing, especially when we get pretty good at academic writing and we think that we are writing clearly. But he said there are 4 things that reading aloud will fix: long-windedness, bureaucratic prose, clang, and interruptions that impede understanding. So in the next slide and the 3 slides following it, I want you to actually practice what Peter Elbow says we can pick up by reading sections of your essay aloud at home. The first one is long-windedness. I think all of us know what a run-on sentence is, but if we are not conscientiously aware of it, sometimes what we think is a well-crafted, in-depth sentence turns into just complete, we lose our reader. So this sentence that's in italics is quite interesting. This was written by a scholar who was actually writing for a page in a textbook on sentence combining. So this was his sentence that he was going to include in the textbook, and he took time to read it aloud, and he recognized all the flaws that were in that sentence. If you stop the tape and read it aloud, it will be easy for you to know that that this writer was not being clear in his or her writing. And then after you do that, Pick a section of your essay where you feel like you may have been long-winded, read it aloud, and fix that part of your draft. The next section of self-revision is to think about this term bureaucratic prose. I have to constantly come back to this idea because when I write, I often use words that end in ION as nouns. And whenever I do that, it makes phrases 3 times as long, or that phrase, instead of being 1 word or 2 words, it ends up being 5 or 6. And it sounds really stuffy and detached. So if you look at this one sentence that's in italics at the top of the page and read it aloud, if you're like me, you'll say, huh, what's going on there? So there was actually a student who took that sentence and says, why don't we say it the way the bottom sentence reads it? Students participate in a community without reinforcing systemic injustice. I want you to think of a place where you tried too hard, or you're trying so hard to be academic that you think maybe the clarity is missing. Read that part of the paper out loud and go back and simplify your writing. Another thing that reading aloud brings to our attention is this idea of clang or repetition. You probably heard the idea that good writers use a thesaurus to find another word to replace the commonly used word. That's a good technique. But we have to remember when we use a thesaurus that the word we select as a substitution is one that fits naturally into the sentence that we have written. For example, if I'm a 6th grader and I have a sentence and my teacher has said, change one of the words and come up with a better word, and I use a thesaurus for that word, and I have this word that's 20 letters long and I've never even said it, but I throw it into the context of the rest of the writing. It becomes glaring, and the reader wonders why in the world why that word is there. So let's pick a section of your paper, stop the tape, and see if you find yourself repeating the same thing over and over. Are there other words that you can say that fit your vocabulary and make it more interesting to read? The final thing I'd like you to do on your own, well, actually not the final thing, but as far as these Peter Elbow suggestion, is to read your essay to see if your punctuation and your phrasing allows you as a reader to flow through the reading. That's what I do when I read your essays. If I get lost, I usually will put a couple question marks on it and remind you to go back and make sure that the words that you have on paper, especially long sentences, that they are written with clarity and punctuation that allows me to pause as I'm reading it to make sense of it. So to improve your style, there are 3 things that you can do. Number 1, make your writing more clear. Cohesion, make it tie together. And the last one, emphasize key points. Look at the first sentence in each of those bullets, and you'll notice it's a poorly written sentence. And then if you go to the second one, it's much cleaner and easier to understand. Another way that we can make our writing clear for the reader is to use appropriate transitional words so that we don't have a string of sentences, but the sentences are actually connected to each other. So think of, here are some different types of transitions that you can use. If you look at the bold words, and then underneath each of those bold words, it would use some possibilities for you to tie your paragraphs together. This slide asks you to, with your revision, to pull out the rubric, making sure that you have met all the guidelines of the rubric. So now, what I want you to do is create a revision plan between now and Wednesday. think of these 4 questions. What are you most proud of? What is your purpose? What factors of good writing do you feel your essay lacks? And what are the 3 major parts of your essay that you're going to work on between now and Wednesday? So with that in mind, in class, now we are breaking into small groups, and you'll notice in these slides, I have a slide for each class period, and I haven't put the students' names in there because I can't move you around for COVID reasons. So they are just going to be working with people around their desks and sharing their essays to get some feedback from each other using their revision plan on this slide, the previous slide, of what they need help on. So if you skip through the slides and go to slide 20, for those of you who are at home, I would suggest you get with a classmate, that you find someone who's a good writer, and look at some of the things that your rubric talks about. They are going to divide and conquer, and each student in the group of 4 will pick 1 or 2 things to give the students some feedback. It's so important. I think you realized from your last essay that revision or responding to other students' work will help your essay be better. So look over this list, contact some of your students in the class, or again, other good writers. If you have an older brother and sister who's at college, you might want to share your work with them, see what they can do to give you some meaningful feedback. There are a couple of other slides that I'd like you to look at. This one are some questions that go over, have you done this and this and this in your essays? So take time to look at these slides and answer them yourself if you are at home. This slide goes over, if you're still lost on how to write a conclusion, since I really didn't take time in class to teach that skill to you, I asked you to look at some of your sample rhetorical analysis essays, see what they have done. When you look at some of those essays, you'll notice that they do what the bullet list on the left-hand side of this slide suggests for you to do. And make sure your conclusion ends well, because that's when I start grading it. And then finally, remember that your essay will be due on Wednesday. When you come to class on Wednesday, we will actually upload your essay into Turnitin and go to the Career Center to print a hard copy so that I can begin grading them over the weekends. So if you're at home today, make sure that you understand your essay has to be done by the time you come to class on Wednesday. Have a good day. We'll see you on Wednesday.